Hey, what's going on guys? Top Tier Gaming here, and today I'm coming at you with sort of a deck building help video concerning like ratios in Weiss Schwarz, like why you should run X amount of card in your deck, like 3 or 4, and what those reasons are exactly. This is coming from me, and everyone deck builds a little differently, so it's all kind of like empirical in the sense where these are coming from my opinions when I go into building a deck. Maybe you might want to run it differently in yours. But all the time I get people asking like how they should go about deck building, and you can just go online, find someone else's deck and like copy it. It's a completely viable option, but if you want to like build your own deck, this could be a really helpful, maybe insightful video for you. So yep, I'm just gonna hop straight into it. Alright guys, so here I have some decks with me, and these are all decks that I have built myself and have gone through sort of the deck building process with each of them and decided what ratios were best, sort of how we should go about building them. And yeah, I'm just probably going to use a couple of examples throughout these decks and sort of decide which would be the best way to sort of explain how you run which ratios of what you're running. Alright, first I want to start by talking sort of about four-ofs in your deck, why you want to play 4 of a card as the ratio you're running of it. And for me, there's a couple of different reasons why. And one reason is that you really want to like hard draw it or open it in the sense of like a runner, sort of like the Shield runner from No Game No Life. I want to see this card in my opening hand, right? I want it to be there, so I have to hard draw it first turn, and to maximize that ratio I'm running 4 of it. It's a card you really don't mind seeing too many of. It's not like a niche pick. You always kind of want it in your starting hand, and you want to maximize the chance you get it. So 4 is really good for like hard drawing, things you really want to see. And a runner kind of, perfectly describes something you'd probably want to run as a 4-of. There are situations where I don't run runners as a 4-of, but almost in every build, if I'm playing the runner, it's going to be as a 4-of just because I want to see it really quickly. Like another reason for a 4-of is cards you want to see a lot of at one time, and you want to see them as consistently as possible. So like your level 1 climax combo, this is the one from Sneaker Bunko. I play 4 of this simply because, well, it's like the heart and soul of the deck. You want to see it probably even in multiples. Like I want to slam 2 or 3 of this down when level 1 hits. So you don't mind seeing multiples of it for sure. You have no like qualms running 4 of it. You're cutting, like you're playing more than 3 so that you can maximize your chance of seeing it, right? And that's kind of why you'd want to run like maybe 4 of your level 1 climax combo. It's another good reason to run 4. Like I want to see multiples of this, and I'm never mad. It's not situational, and I'm not mad if I see multiples. And then like lastly are cards you really want to see, or they provide like the most power for your deck. Like for ReZero, 4 of this Amelia in my 8-book version, I choose to run the Amelia as like most 8-book versions do, because she has like anti-damage and stuff. She's really, really powerful, and she's part of the reasons the deck does what it does, and I want to maximize my chance of seeing it. She never like clogs my hand in the sense where I don't mind dropping 2 or 3 of this when it's time to play her, right? So like a 4-of is just very good there as well. You're playing 4-ofs mostly for cards you want to see in multiples or very, very early, and you don't mind hard drawing them. So it's just very good to maximize sort of your quantity so that you can maximize the consistency that you see your 4-ofs. And there are cards that are almost as good as 4-ofs, but you need to make space in some situations. So even cards good enough to be 4-ofs, you may drop to a 3-of, and that's sort of how I bridge into talking about 3-ofs. Alright, next I want to talk about 3-ofs, and before I get into this section, something I probably should have mentioned before I talked about 4-ofs is that it's sort of different for every deck. No deck, or like not every deck is going to follow all of the same rules exactly. So it's like, especially when you're talking about ratios, considering how many zeros you should run, how many level 1s you should run, level 2s, level 3s, etc. It's different per deck, but these are some general like tips or reasons you want to run what ratio you're running. So getting straight into 3-ofs, like so 3 of this Steph, I play her at 3 because I want to see her in the sense that No Game No Life is running standby. I want to like discard her turn 1, and I want to stand by her out at level 0. So I run 3-of, and even though I want to see it maybe as bad as a 4-of, the problem with a card like this is you don't want to see too many of it. Like it's a 1/1, so it could very, very easily clog. So a 3-of makes sense because even though it's good enough to maybe see it as a 4-of, not only does it have the chance to clog, but you need to make space for other cards in your deck. And so you cut like potential four-ofs to three-ofs if they have any like diminishing returns or anything like that. And this stuff kind of portrays that pretty well. But then there's also 3 of this clean cut from ReZero. So clean cuts are like an interesting one because I feel like they're definitely good enough to run as a four-of, but they're also interesting in the fact that they're like not great starter cards. So like opposed to runners that you want to run 4 of, if you're going first, you don't mind seeing the runner. But if you open like your clean cut as your only level 0 going first, it's kind of annoying because you feel like you lose some potential like opportunity cost advantage because you kind of have to play your clean cut and it's not going to do what it's intended to do. So I usually end up running like 3 of these cards because they're very powerful. You want to see them, but they're not like always useful, and they kind of lose their utility near later parts of the game. So I don't usually run 4 of a clean cut unless it's also like an early play condition like in Sword Art. But yeah, so that's a good reason to run a 3 of is, you know, it's a great card, but it's not like a good starter card. I probably don't want to see too many of this. It's not like always useful. And then there's something like this Kurisu from Steins Gate, where this is a card I really want to see early, right? Like it's very important for my Steins Gate deck to see this card, but it's a 3 of because once I see 1, the other 2 are so much less valuable. Like I don't want to run a 4 of for cards I don't want to see in multiples. I want to see 1 of this Kurisu decently early, and that's like it. The other 2 are going to be like discard fodder, or like I'll clock them, maybe use as a vanilla swing if they have like an open slot, but I don't want to see too many of this Kurisu, right? So like assists and sometimes brainstorms, although brainstorms I think get a pass because they're so powerful that you can definitely run 4 brainstorm. But like assists especially, I try to keep like 3 or lower if they're really important, because once I see 1, I'm good. Like the other 2 lose their value the second I have 1 of them, and I think that's another good reason to run like 3 of a card. And now on to 2-ofs, where things start getting a little interesting because it's not so cut and dry why you're running 2 of a card, or especially 1 of a card that I'll get to later. Alright, for 2-ofs, it sort of like bridges into some of the reason you run 3 of a card and some of the reasons you might run 1 of a card. And these are like situational picks that they're not useful all the time, or maybe they can clog your hand. And overall, maybe you just wanted to make space for something else. Like these cards are great, but there are possible like 3-ofs that you may have cut down to 2 for extra space, or it was a 1-of that performed really well, so you brought it up to 2. It varies for each situation, but like in my Sneaker Bunko deck, I played 2 of this like anti-early play. So this is a card I'm probably going to use once or twice a game, maybe. Like I don't need to see a lot of it early. It's a level 2. It has situations where it's very good and situations where it's not so great, right? It's not like a tech card in the sense that I would say many 1-ofs can be, but like it's not the most every situation pick. It's something you may need in a moment, and it's a really good card, so I do choose to play 2 of it. This was sort of a situation where it could have been a 1-of, but it was just such a good card I bumped it up to 2. So yeah, that's a reason to play 2 of a card is, you know, was it a 1-of, was it a 3-of? Do you need more space? Was the card performing so well that you're willing to cut another card to run more of it? But yeah, you again don't want these to clog. You don't want them to make your hands any worse. You want to see them when you need them. They're also cards that maybe you could run as a 1-of, but they're like important pieces, so you don't want to see them in stock or in your clock if the situation arises when you need them. So they're like less situational 1-ofs that you've bumped up to 2 for consistency. That's how I kind of look at them. There's a bunch of reasons to run a 2-of other than like reasons I'm giving. Sometimes everything is just a space issue. Like you could boil all of these down to like every card in your deck you want as a 4-of, but space issues lead you to create ratios. That is definitely like a viable reason in deck building is space a lot. But I think you can break it down even further to why you're running what you're running of a card. And next is like this Evil Eye from Overlord. So level assist in particular, usually I see as a 2-of, especially in like my Sneaker Bunko, that level assist is a little more important. But these are cards, again, once you see 1 of it, the other one's like utility sort of diminishes. You don't really want 2 of these in the back all the time because you want a Brainstormer back there. That's not for every situation. Sometimes you need the power. Maybe you do play 2 of these. But 1 is usually enough to get you there, right? And I run 2 because in case I need it, if 1's in stock or clock. You know, you just want to see the other ones. It's like too good of a card to consider it to be like a one of, and that's why again I would run it at like 2. And that sort of leads into where I'm going to one-ofs, which I think one-ofs are the most interesting type of ratio in Weiss, because usually you have a very specific reason to be playing a one-of. And it's usually like a tech card or like a situational pick, and that's where I think like they're the most fun cards to sort of deck build. And yeah, I'm just gonna get straight into like some one-of logic. Alright, I pulled out some one-ofs, and like I said earlier, one-ofs are like my favorite part of deck building because they're really interesting in the fact that they're usually like tech picks, things that are very, very niche situational picks, but you find worth it to run in your deck. So I feel like the easiest one that can be like a one-of in some of my builds is the anti-change backup. I think these can easily be two-ofs if your deck has the space for it. I usually run them as one-ofs because sometimes for early play backups, it's more the like their use comes from just being in the deck. Like you don't always have to have it in hand for it to be useful. The second your opponent knows you're running an anti-change backup, they have to act accordingly. They can make like a hard read that you're only playing one, and then they can play around it accordingly if you don't have it, but you know, they always have to be scared you're running 2 unless they visually see you're running 1 somehow. So yeah, this could be a 2 or a 1-of, but I often find them at 1-ofs because in some matchups they're just not good, and they'll be like just less good than a vanilla backup. But in some matchups they're amazing, right? Like you need them, like Love Live Sunshine, Goblin Slayer, like you really want your anti-change backup. And I think it's a good 1-of in that sense, but I think anti-change backups are like the simplest thing to put as a 1-of. There's definitely some more like difficult things or maybe player preference choices, like this Suzuha from Steins Gate. I haven't seen almost any builds like play this card, but I choose to run it because my Steins Gate version is running a shot trigger and a gate trigger, and they're both on climax combos, and you don't always have them. This card allows you to like pay 1, discard a climax to salvage a climax, and I play as a 1-of because in like situations where I have my gate over my shot, I want to see this card so I can like swap them out and be able to perform my level 1 climax combo. So cards like these where they're like very situational, you don't want to see multiples almost ever because when I'm not using this, it's literally just a vanilla. But it's a situational pick that can get me a lot of momentum, or you know, I can actually do what my deck's designed to do if I have this card in the right situation. And like tech choices, player preference choices, they all fall into like 1-of categories, or 2-ofs if you really like how they perform. But yeah, like a card like this performs really great as a 1-of. And then this Aqua from Sneaker Bunko. So this card is a 1-of because in some matchups it's like the best card in my deck, and then in other matchups it's like terrible, right? Again, another situational like niche pick. But this is one of those cards where you can like send one of their characters to memory and then it comes back on the stage, pretty much negating on-field effects. And like I run this as a 1-of because just for how powerful it is in the matchups it's good against. Like imagine you're playing against Heaven's Field, they set up 3 riders to where you literally cannot deal damage that turn, right? Like you can utilize this with your Rickies and Brainstorms, and you can actually like play this 3 times in the same turns, even though it's a 1-of, and it'll just like wipe their whole board of effects. And like it's just so powerful in matchups against like anti-damage. It also removes traits, so it's like good against like Bunny Girl because you can remove Adolescence from the Bodyguard, and it just loses all the power of its supports. So in like some matchups this card is just too good, and running it as a 1-of gives you at least the option to you know, combat those cards where it's just very, very good against. And then another one is like a 1-of where it's very, very situational, and it can just really net you a lot of advantage in the situation where it's good, and that's like one of this Tet in my No Game No Life build. It's like a Ricky effect, but it's a little more advantageous because you clock a card in your hand and then you salvage 2 characters, both a Sora and a Shiro. And I mean, it's still just a +1 like any other Ricky, but in some situations, because I run a dual color level 1, it can be very good for getting both colors. And it does just get pieces you need. And this is a card I definitely wouldn't want to see in multiples because again, a lot of the times it could just end up being like a 5k vanilla. But yeah, it is very good in the situations where it's good. So yeah, that was sort of the deck building ratios like advice video. Like I have people ask me quite frequently how they should go about building their decks. And I've had like a lot of experience building decks. In fact, even if you follow my channel, you know I'm like a pretty like an experienced Yu-Gi-Oh player. And I've even built my own decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! And if you know anything about Yu-Gi-Oh! That's actually extremely difficult to do. But I actually created a deck called PK Hero back in 2016. The deck is like my baby because everyone, or not everyone, but a lot of people on YouTube even started picking up the deck. I had articles written about the deck because of like how inventive it was. It had like 100% top rate amongst my friends, and I'm still so proud of the deck to this day. So like deck building can be very rewarding. Sometimes I go on Encore decks and I see people have like watched my deck profiles and they've gone on Encore decks and sort of made the deck themselves with like the changes I said to make. And you know, it can just be really rewarding building your own decks and a lot of fun. So I do want to just like create a video where maybe people trying to get into deck building can sort of understand it more. Again, this was a video that's like, I showed like a bunch of very specific scenarios, but it does differ like based on the deck you're building. It's never going to be so cut and dry that, well, Top Tier Gaming said this is a situation I should run a one-of, so it should be a one-of. There are some decks where a one-of could definitely be a two or a three-of based on your build. And yeah, it just depends, but hopefully this is like a good starting point for some players deciding to want to build their own decks. And I hope you did enjoy. If you did, feel free to leave a comment, like, subscribe. I do upload Weiss videos like every other day, so if you want Weiss Schwarz content, you can subscribe for that. And yeah, this was Top Tier Gaming. Bye, YouTube.